Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. This is a podcast to inspire, uplift, show forth the love of God, and help usher in the spiritual awakening. Please like, subscribe to this channel, and share everywhere. Thank you. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I have a guest today, Kat Dunkel. She had a near-death experience. How are you, Kat?
I'm fine, thank you, Jay. Thank you for inviting me today.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your near-death experience?
Well, it certainly was something that changed my life dramatically. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, and to get away from that, I think I ended up marrying into the same type of thing that I ran away from, which was the alcoholic parents, and my life was just kind of a mess. And I guess as a child, I had always kind of believed in God, and as I grew into my teens, I started doubting, and I think a lot of kids do, and I just kind of was an agnostic most of my life, just not really believing there was anybody out there or life after death or anything. And then a dear friend of mine was in a car wreck and died. And first funeral I'd ever gone to, first dead person I'd ever seen. And when I went there, I started thinking about my own immortality and what was going to happen to me when I died. And so, I just wanted very badly to really believe. And I went to every church I could possibly imagine, just trying to find something that I truly believed in, but just didn't happen. I mean, I just searched everywhere, and I would have believed in anything if it just kind of clicked with me, but nothing did. So I just assumed this was it. When we die, and that's it. So it's kind of the way I lived my life. Well, by the time I was 21 in this bad marriage, I had two little boys and a nervous breakdown, and knew I had to get out of it. I left Kansas City, where we were, in an old beat up car, and moved to Seattle, Washington, and tried to build a life for my sons and I. And it was very difficult. We moved into government housing. We had no money. We slept on the floor in sleeping bags, and had the gas stove that heated our unit, and had a little pilot light, and we laid in our sleeping bags down there and pretend that was a campfire, and we were camping. And the boys loved it. I mean, they run through the house and didn't have to worry about breaking anything, or we go to the library and get books and go feed the ducks. And I had a happy life. I was very content with the way things were going. And then a lady at work one day said, she came in, she said, "I found the man you're going to marry." And I said, "There's no way, I don't want anything to do with that at all." And so, long story short, we ended up getting married, and had another son, and life was really, really good at that point. I mean, this man was a wonderful man, just something, a dream come true. He owned his own home, a brand new car, and life was really, really good. But he bought a business, a tavern, with a friend of his. We were in our 20s, and to be in business for himself was a dream. And so alcohol was something I didn't want any part of, but he bought this, and things got a little contentious with the two of us when that happened, but not bad. And I didn't work there at all at the tavern, but only on Monday nights I did. And this one Monday night, I kissed my boys goodbye, and went into work. And I no more had walked through the door when my husband, Don, was on the phone, and I couldn't figure out, well, what's so important that he'd be talking? The place is packed full of people, and he needs to be busy. We hung up the phone, and he came over and grabbed my arm and was kind of pulling me out the door, saying words that just didn't compute. It was like, that my son Mark had been hit by a car. And we drove to the hospital and got there as the ambulance was pulling in. And I saw them bring Mark's little body out of the ambulance, and the doctor came running out asking us how it had happened. And I don't know how it happened. And they took him into surgery right away. And we were led into a waiting room Well, we just sat there waiting hour after excruciating hour and not believing in God or anything at all. I couldn't pray. I didn't know what to do. We kind of leaned on each other, and it was just a horrible, horrible time. And we could see things that were happening, people going in and out of the room and code red and things. And it just like, our hearts stopped a million times that night. And towards morning, I walked down the hallway and was staring out the window, and I saw cars going by and lights coming on in houses, and knowing that it was just a new day was starting for people. And I thought, how could this be? How could life just go on? Didn't they know what was going on in this hospital? But of course they didn't. And I heard footsteps coming down the hallway, and I knew what they were going to say, that my son Mark, that they weren't able to save him. So we went in the room, and I laid down, and Mark was so cold that I brought the covers up over him, and I saw a tear in his eye. I leaned down and kissed him and told him, "Don't cry, Mark. Mommy's here." It's like I could fix anything, and I just collapsed at that point. And so Don took me, and I don't know much after that, but we drove around, I guess, and I knew we had to go home and tell his brother Chris what had happened. Chris was with him when this happened and saw the whole thing, and ran out in the street and asked, Marky, are you okay? And then people just gathered around, and Chris was just left alone, and he had to walk home and tell the babysitter what had happened. And so I had to tell Chris, that the doctors weren't able to fix Mark, and that he was gone. And of course, Chris, from that day on, really was never the same. And so life became really bad at that point. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't smile. I couldn't do anything except sit in the chair and just stare off into space. I just could not talk to people, and nobody could give me comfort. It was like people would come and say, "Your son is with Jesus now," and I would shake them. I was like, "Your Jesus, I'll tell you about your Jesus. He kills little children." And I was so angry, and the thought of God or anybody just angered me to no point, as I didn't want anything to do with your God, if he exists, which I certainly didn't think he did at that point. But so I lived that way for quite a while, and finally my husband had enough, and he said, you have to get out. You have to get on with your life. And I was furious at the thought. And he said, you have to. We have some friends that are meeting tonight, and I want you to go. I want you to come with me and go. And I argued with him, but we started out, went out to the car, and as we got in the car, I was fighting with him and arguing, and he said something about getting on with my life. And we pulled out of the driveway. We were driving down the street, highway, and this bickering turned into just yelling and arguing and screaming at each other, and just horrible, horrible argument that we got into. And when he said those words to me, that you need to move on, I came across the seat of the car, just smashing into his face and scratching, just screaming at him, I hate you, I hate you. And he took his arm and like this and just hit me over to my side of the car. And I saw stars and everything, but I didn't realize I was hurt. And I just slumped down. I said, "Just please take me home," which he did. And he went into the bathroom, was splashing cold water in his face, and I grabbed the car keys and ran to the car, because that's what I always did when I got cornered, was just run. And I got in the car and just took off, and he was at the door screaming at me, and I just couldn't get away fast enough or go far enough. And I got out on the freeway, and I felt this terrible, terrible pain inside of me. And I didn't know if my heart was just breaking or if something was really, truly wrong with me. And so I stopped the car, and just everything was a big blur, and cars were going by honking at me, splashing water on me. It was raining, and I was all drenched in rain, and I undid my clothes, and it was the pressure inside in my stomach was just terrible. And I got back. I don't know how I drove back home, but I got there, and Dawn was standing at the door, just furious with me. I halfway crawled and walked up to the door, and I said, I need to get to the hospital or something drastically wrong with me. And, I started to go to call an ambulance, and he said, well, I'll take you to the hospital if you're that bad. And so he did. And we were in a room, and the doctors came in and told me that, asked me how I got the bruise on my back. And I didn't want to tell them what had happened because Don's not a wife beater. And I was afraid if something does happen for the worst, what will happen to him. And so I was concerned, and I didn't know who these doctors were. And they told me that I needed to get into surgery right away, that my blood pressure had dropped drastically and my blood count. They didn't have MRIs or CAT scans. We're talking about the late 60s. And so they didn't have the diagnostic tools that they have today. But they knew by the fact that my blood pressure and blood count were dropping so dramatically that something was wrong. And with the bruise on my back, they decided that I had to go into surgery and find out what was wrong. So they put me on a gurney and started me down the hall to surgery. And because I was frightened, I thought, who are these doctors? I don't even know who they are. And am I going to die, or what's wrong with me? I knew I was in a lot of pain. But they stopped the gurney, and Don leaned over me and told me that he loved me. And I thought, I didn't think he even liked me anymore, let alone love me. And so it was like I clung to that vision as we went into surgery. And when we got in there, the doctors and the nurses were hovering over me, and they put the mask over my face, and I knew I should be able to breathe, but I couldn't breathe. And things just turned totally black. And I knew I should be going under the anesthetic, but I was awake, and I couldn't talk to them or tell them that I was awake, and I didn't even hear them or see them at that point. It was just total black, and I could not breathe. And I wanted to pull that mask off my face, but my hands were strapped down for surgery, and I couldn't move. And all of a sudden, I felt myself kind of transgressing through the blackness into a hallway. And I was moving along, and I felt like I don't have to breathe anymore. I still felt this panic because it wasn't right not to be breathing, but I didn't have to breathe. And as I moved forward, I felt more comfortable, and I looked down and I saw my husband and my two other sons standing around a lamppost, and it was raining. And I thought to myself, that they think I'm dead. And I wanted to tell them, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I don't know what's happening right now, but I'm just fine. And I knew just in my head that they would be just fine, that they were going to be okay. And I was moving on. I didn't know I was dead at that point or what was happening. I don't really remember a real state of confusion or anything, just being somewhat okay, not real peaceful, not real scared or anything. Excuse me. And then I started moving forward again, knowing they would be just fine. I saw 4 human figures standing off to my left. They were dressed in street clothes. They weren't angels or anything, just normal people. And they looked really concerned for me, like I was in a lot of trouble or something. And I thought to myself, what is this? I didn't know these people, and my son had died, and I knew people that had died, but this was nobody that I knew. And I don't know to this day what that was all about or who they were. Someday I'll know, I guess. But then I kept moving forward, and this transmission came to me, not a verbal transmission, but a thought came to me. There is no God. And I heard this horrendous noise, like a freight train or a jet engine just blasting, and this horrendous noise and pulling through my chest like a rope going 100 miles an hour, just tearing and ripping through my chest. And then it stopped, and I knew that God existed. And I can't explain how I knew or the depth to which I knew, but I knew. And, it was over 50 years ago, and I feel that the same right now today, sitting here, as I did then. I knew God existed. And then I started moving forward again, and I heard the same horrendous noise and the same pulling through my chest. And the thought came to me, there is no heaven. And then it all stopped, and I knew that heaven existed. And I felt this peace that can't be described. I've never heard anybody describe it as of yet, but this overwhelming sensation of well-being and peace and just absolute euphoric feeling of just something that nobody can explain. And then the noise came again, and then pulling through my chest, and the thought, there is no hell. And I felt myself drop through the floor, just like standing in an elevator and the floor drops out and you start falling into total darkness. And I kept falling into this darkness and screaming, this sensation of falling and knowing where I was, that I was in hell. I didn't know what depth of hell or where, of course, at that time wasn't thinking about that. All I thought about that was I was in hell. And I knew God had not sent me there, that I had blasphemed God. I hated God. If God existed, I wanted no part of him. And I believe God honored that. I mean, I didn't want God. I didn't want God in my life, and he wasn't. And so the fact that God sent me there was even in my mind. I knew that I had sent myself there. And I would fall into this darkness. And I thought at that time, I guess that was all that hell was total separation from God, from anybody or anything, and falling alone, totally alone, into this horrible darkness. And I knew others were there, but I couldn't see anything. And it was just the total blackness, the screaming of myself, just screaming and screaming, God, please forgive me. I believe in you, God. I know you exist and I believe in you. Please forgive me. Take me out of this place. And I was like beyond terrified. I was beyond sad. I was beyond anything, any words that you can describe. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And I knew it was for eternity. I couldn't commit suicide. I'd never hit the bottom. Nobody would crawl in here and take me out. God, it was almost as though God didn't even know I existed, that I would fall and burn and into this darkness for eternity, forever and ever and ever. So as I was screaming and screaming, God, please forgive me, I then felt everything kind of go backwards, and I felt myself coming back into the tunnel where I was and going back through the tunnel. And as I came to the entrance to where I came in, I heard a voice verbally say to me, bring people to me. And then I felt the spirit of the will to live enter back into my body. And I went back through into the surgery room, waking up and screaming, that I died. There is a God. And they wheeled me into the recovery room, and Don was in there, and I told him, I died. There's a God. And like I said, it's over 50 years ago that this happened to me, and my life changed from an agnostic atheist, bitter and angry and horrible, horrible life, into this joy and happiness that's been with me ever since. Life's not easy for anybody, and not for me either, but I have this knowledge, this hope and ability to help others, and a purpose to my life. And it's been 50 years of absolute joy with God in it. And so that's my story. And I wrote my memoir finally, because I'm getting to the age now where I'll be gone pretty soon for good. And I wanted the story to be there for my family. And so that just came out. And so I've been very, very happy and able to speak to people that are hurting now, people that have lost children, people that have lost a loved one, or even themselves, or maybe have cancer, or you're going to die, and that, but you don't know how to accept that. And of course, that happens to us all. But it doesn't have to be a scary thing. So I hope that if my story can encourage one person, then it's been worth it. So thank you for that opportunity, Jay.
Have you ever wondered whether the Bible was compatible with a near-death experience? In my book, Heaven's Truth, the parallels between the Bible and the near-death experience, your faith will be strengthened while you support this channel. In Heaven's Truth, you will learn about near-death experiences and other similar experiences in the Bible. Support for the Bible contained in NDEs. A central theme that runs through both the Bible and NDEs. How the NDE brings the Bible to life for these modern times. Evidence for both the Bible and the NDE, and much more. Great book. Spillers does an excellent job weaving the relationship between NDEs and the scriptures. 5 stars on Amazon. Available on Amazon. When you heard the voice say there's no God or there's no heaven, no hell, was that your voice saying that, you think?
No, it was a nonverbal transmission that I felt or happened. It wasn't a voice of anybody. It was as the thought came to me, is the way I put it, but it's just a nonverbal transmission that I knew, that what was being said to me and my answer or whatever to it. So
who do you think the thought came from, though, is what I'm saying?
where do I think it came from?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say that it came, I think the whole thing showed me what it's all about and gave me the opportunity to change my life and maybe change the lives of other people. And so I do believe that it came from God. I believe that all those types of things do come from God. And that, is certainly my belief.
So was it essentially that you started out in a heavenly realm because you said you felt peaceful, and then you descended into a hellish realm?
Yes, that's right. And I guess it was more important for me to know the peace of God, to know this incredible, overwhelming thing before I descended into that hopelessness and horror of that. And I think now, and the descriptions that many people have of hell are different than mine, the lake of fire or whatever, that there probably is more to it than what I experienced. But what I experienced, that overwhelming knowledge of knowing that I was totally alone forever and ever, falling into the darkness, the separation totally from God or from anything or anybody, was hell. Certainly couldn't get much worse than that, other than torment. But I don't know about hell or heaven, but I do know that good and evil can't exist together. And I know evil does exist. And I know that there are people, Satan even chose to leave God. Okay, he was Lucifer. He chose to leave. So I'm sure others do too. I think people on earth are so wicked, so evil, that they would actually choose to follow after Satan. And a third of the angels of heaven did. So why would we be any different? So my interpretation of hell is probably a lot deeper than what I experienced. But what I experienced was horrific enough. But I do know it exists. And a lot of people say, I don't believe a loving God would ever send anybody to hell. Well, I don't believe he does. I believe that's a choice that we make. And people say, well, you'd have to be crazy to choose to go to hell. Well, I don't think, if truly evil person with evil in their heart and evil what they love, that's what they want. That's what they want. And I have met evil people. I'm sure you have too. I mean, people that are absolutely evil. And I don't want to spend eternity with those people. I don't. And I would not wish that on anybody. But I don't know. I just don't know. I think the whole concept of it is that we really don't know a whole lot. And we will someday. And we will. And I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that heaven, that glorious, wonderful place that I am so excited. I didn't get to go into heaven. I just got close, and it was close enough. And the joy and the overwhelming peace and the incredible feeling of euphoric, just incredible. So, yeah. And like I said, I think that there's a lot of descriptions of hell. Mine was one, and the Bible describes two. it's spoken a lot about in the Bible. It's there, and I think people need to understand that. They need to understand that it is there, and God doesn't send you there. So, and I also think that everyone has that same choice that I had during the dying process. So if somebody has a loved one that died and they didn't know Jesus or they didn't know God or whatever, and they died, pretty nasty person maybe, we don't know what happened during the dying process. Maybe they had the same revelation I had and they turned their lives towards God. So, that's our hope with people that we don't like so much that they make it.
Well, I know like Dr. Mary Neal said that when she went to heaven, she was told that everyone gets at least one last chance to
Oh,
either embrace God or not embrace God. So that sort of go along with what you're saying, I think.
I didn't know that about Mary's testimony. Huh.
I'd heard that on one of the YouTube video. I had her book too, and I think I've read it in there,
Yeah,
But
that's
so I
incredible.
mean,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, that's incredible to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, is it like hell is an eternal realm, but you don't necessarily need to spend all of eternity there because obviously you were able to come out.
I was able to come out, I believe, because I made the proclamation that I believed in God, and I believe in you. I believe in you, and please save me from this place. So, I had to reach out to God first before I came out of hell. I didn't just come out because I was a good person, because I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I came out because I made that proclamation that I believed in God. Uh, please save me from this place. And I believe we all have to make that choice in life. I believe my life has been blessed because of that proclamation of allowing not me to be me, but to allow God to live through me. And that was my big desire was to allow God to live through me and to be a voice for the Lord. And I've spent 50 some years doing that. I mean, I never have wavered, not one tiny little bit have I. And my entire life since then has been, and I went from this one person that was nasty, mean, and angry and broken and stepped on and beat up to a person that succeeded in life. I went to bed about 6 months after this happened, and I had a dream about starting a business. And in the dream, it's work that I had done before. I worked in an auto agency, and I one day sat down and started calling some customers. And we're talking back in the 60s when car dealerships back then were really the kind of the scum of the earth. I mean, they were commissioned salespeople that fought cats and dogs over one sale, and they'd get it no matter what. So the whole industry was really bad, was not governed well at all. And anyway, I get an earful from these customers. I took this information into the owner, and he thought this was wonderful. Well, I went to bed one night and I dreamed about starting a business doing that. Well, I had a high school education. I wasn't really well educated because my father was with the government. We moved all over the country. So, my education was really disrupted in many ways. The curriculums were different or whatever. Anything I learned was pretty much self-taught. So here I am, this person that doesn't know much about anything. I go to bed and have this dream of starting this business. Well, this business today is a multi-million-dollar corporation run by my son now that I'm retired and I play golf. So our son took it over, and we financially did extremely well through that. And that, I believe, was a gift from God, and has allowed us to do things with that. And it's been wonderful. But how does that happen? How does that happen? Um, it was great. I mean, my life has been great. I have bad days like everybody, but not too many. Not too many.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of like when you talked about getting out of hell. It's kind of like that verse that says, "If you call upon the name of the Lord, you shall be saved." And there
Yeah.
aren't necessarily any qualifiers. We always put qualifiers on it. And there's been other people that have had NDEs that have sort of felt within them, call out to God, call out to Jesus, and then they were snatched out of hell, just like you.
Yes. Yeah. Must be something to that then, right? You know, when I picked up a Bible, I'd never read a Bible in my life, you know, and I picked it up after this, and I couldn't figure out why they wrote the New Testament. Wasn't the Old Testament good enough? And I didn't understand any of it. It was like Greek to me. Well, I started in the New Testament and started, I get a verse maybe that really kind of spoke to me, and I'd underline that. Well, now my Bible is all messed up with all underlining and writing in it, and because it so spoke to me. And I don't know how many times I picked it up because I was just sad about something, or didn't know about something, or something happened in life. Life was being life, and I'd open it up, and there would be a verse that kind of answered how I should respond or what I should do. And you know, I keep real close. I have a lot of Christian mentors that I keep close to, and they keep me on the straight and narrow. It was I would get off the path every now and then, and they pull me back in. And I think it's important that we have encouraging people around us that think the way that we do. But the Bible is, if nothing else, is a wonderful history book, but so many truths in it that I just can't even begin to tell you. So that was a foundation for me, and getting under the teachings of good pastors. There are good ones out there, and there are bad ones out there, and I think you just have to keep seeking until you find, you know, what works for you, and something will.
Do you kind of wish that when you were pulled out of hell, you could have had some time in heaven? Because some NDErs that went to hell were pulled out and got to spend some time in heaven.
I'll be there quick, soon enough. You know, I feel like I had something to do here before I go. And, you know, like I'm 80 years old now, so it's not going to be long. And I look forward to that. I look forward to seeing my son. You know, I didn't see my son during my NDE. And I'm so excited to be with him, to see him. So it's, to me, is this blessed, the end final blessing in life is going to be the walking into the gates of heaven. And so, yeah, yeah, it would have been nice to come back with stories from heaven, but I didn't. So, yeah.
But when you got the initial glimpse with peace, did you see anything?
When I, as far as heaven's concerned?
Yeah, like before you descended into hell and you felt that great sense of peace, did you actually see anything?
I saw this brilliance. As I said, as the thought came to me that pulling through the rope and that there is no heaven, I saw the brilliance of heaven, and I was moving towards it, knowing I was going there. And right before the bottom dropped out, I was headed towards that, and it looked like it was just being held back by some structure or something, but this brilliance that just underlying, it was more than just looking into the sun. It was brilliance all the way of, you know, the field of my vision was this brilliance, and I was moving towards it, and the excitement in me was just, besides this overwhelming peace, and there was this excitement of knowing I was going to heaven, and it was incredible. And that's just being on the outer limits of that. I can't even imagine what it's like in heaven. I just can't even imagine. So I'm excited about that, but I didn't see anything else or hear anything else. But the brilliance was just drawing me towards it. And yeah, it was, you know, prior to that, going through, there is no God, there is no heaven. I didn't see the brilliance, but as I knew God existed and I was moving towards heaven, that's when I saw the brilliance, and it was just drawing me. It was incredible. I just can't imagine. Did Mary Neal go into heaven? She went into heaven.
Oh yeah, she did, and she met with Jesus and things like that.
Yeah,
but it's sort of like you weren't really ready to go into heaven yet, so you were kind of held back.
Yeah. I don't know why, and you know, I don't really care. I just care that I daily do what I feel that I'm here for, and like, it's been a long time. 50 years is a long time, and But it seems like it was just yesterday. Yeah, I've never forgotten 1 second of it. And, I never prepare for any of these podcasts. I just tell what's in my heart and what happened to me. So I don't need words to go by. It's just there. It's just there. It was wonderful.
Mhm. Well, like when you got back, you believed in God. Was there sort of like an intuitive direction that you were being guided to? Because you could believe in God, but that could go in a million different directions.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I think I was kind of guided. There were people just kind of came into my life and helped me along my way. I first I didn't know about church. My mother was a Catholic, so the first church I went to was the Catholic church, and they had daily mass. So I went every morning at 6 o'clock, 7 days a week. I was at church, and I didn't know what was going on because it was said in Latin and stuff. And I didn't, but it was a place to pray. It was a place to be close to God. And I felt then as time led out of the Catholic Church and into an evangelical church, because I was just hungry to find out about God, and I wasn't learning anything there at the Catholic Church. I didn't even know what was going on. And I remember, though, while I was there, that the church was totally empty. I think there was maybe one other lady that used to come to mass at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know if she was there or not. But that morning, I laid down on the altar, and I told God that I just wanted Him to live through me. I wanted to give my entire life to Him, no matter how much time I had left on earth, that I could do His will. And I guess that's what you'd call a sinner's prayer or being born again. I don't know, but I felt definitely led out of the Catholic Church and into a church where I could learn about God, where I could learn about the Bible. And and that was another thing. I went to a priest at the Catholic Church to try to tell him what had happened to me. And if he knew, maybe he could explain to me, because back then I'd never heard of a near-death experience, and there was never any talk about anything like that back in the 60s. And so I went in and I told this priest about what happened to me, and he got furious with me, got so mad. He said, "Who do you think you are?" I said, "I don't know. That's why I'm here." But anyway, that was a bad experience. And then, but I went to this evangelical church, and they taught about the Bible, and it was just what I needed to learn. But I had a lot of work that needed to be done in me too. I mean, I had to be healed of a lot of abuses and terrible things that had happened to me as a child growing up and later. And so those things happened to me. I was in a lot of teaching. I was in a lot of by choice, and I would listen to almost any speaker that would come to town. I was hungry for anything that had to do with God. I was so hungry for that. So I grew. I had a period of time of just me being groomed and trained and knowing how to profess my belief of God to others and be that example. And so, my kids, my other two sons, my husband, they're all Christians. We all go to church together. We, pray together, the whole family, the extended family, grandkids, everybody. So, life has been pretty good. But there was a lot of work that went into being where I'm at. And I don't think you ever stop learning. I mean, every day I get new revelations from whatever, from the Bible or from people like yourself or stories or whatever, and constantly being fed and try to stay in that realm, and away from the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, just like you had the priest's reaction, and that was probably pretty common back then because nobody had heard about NDEs. Did you
Right.
get the same reaction in other churches? Like when you started going to evangelical churches, were they open to it or kind of skeptical? Or
You were a little leery. The one first pastor I was sat under told me, he said, "Well, it probably would be a good idea if you didn't tell anybody about this, but let that be your motivation for bringing others to Christ. I wouldn't go around telling everybody about this." But that's not what God told me to do. That's not what I was led to do. So I just didn't argue with him or anything, but my feeling was that I needed to talk to others. But no, I didn't receive a lot of bad feedback. Most people were very encouraging and understanding, and oh wow, and then when you heard, I started hearing more and more of these stories. Then I met Dr. Grayson way back. Like, I can't remember when exactly I got. I can't remember if I got in touch with him or he got in touch with me, but he's been a dear friend of mine for years. And he did, I don't know. Have you ever heard of Dr. Bruce Grayson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's studied near-death experiences. I'm in his book on page 144. He wrote a book called Alive, or After. I'm sorry, I always want to call it Alive. After, and I'm on page 144 of his book. But it was a early study for him, and he wrote about it in his book. And so, even with Dr. Grayson, I've had a lot of encouragement, to be able to speak out and have some scientific facts behind me, which has really helped a lot. Because I think NDEs are thrown in with all of the paranormal experiences, and they are not the same. They really, Dr. Grayson said that to me. They're absolutely not the same. A near-death experience is in a class of its own, and mediums or reincarnation and all of that extra, those things are something different. And a near-death experience, and I hate the fact that they are all lumped in together, because it is absolutely different. It's scientifically backed, and there's a lot of data that shows that these experiences are real. There is something that happens, and I'm sure there's people out there that have not had a real experience, that maybe go on just for the notoriety of it. But he has a scale that he goes by, and he has 16 questions that he asks people to verify their experience. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I had 21 things out of questions that he asked me and I only needed 16. So it was verified by Dr. Grayson.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know, like, a lot of times you'll see mediums, and obviously, like, if you read the Old Testament, that stuff is forbidden. But you'll hear people say, like, oh, so and so's in the room and they're saying this, that, and the other thing. And I mean, you could invite dark spirits in, but sometimes it just seems kind of like, I don't really know if that's anything at all. It might just be made up.
Yeah, I know. But sometimes, if you can give them some type of scientific information, or you point them towards Dr. Grayson's book. I mean, it's all hard for me. I have to read that book 20 times before I understand a lot of it, because he does talk from a scientific perspective, and it's hard to follow. But there are answers to a lot of the near-death experience things that have happened to people. Mediums and stuff. I don't know. Some of that stuff seems to work, and that's why people believe in it. But it is forbidden. We're told to stay away from it in the Bible. But I do know that there are mediums and people that, I guess, they're mediums that can tell the future or whatever, but they help solve crimes and do things like that are good. But of course, Satan comes as an angel of light too. So. So be careful. I mean, I'm not saying it's all wrong. I'm not trying to judge it in any way. It's just not for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had mentioned one thing in your NDE, that you saw your sons and your husband, and it was raining, and they were outside. That's one thing that some NDEs have been able to get confirmation about, is they'll see something within their room or outside the room, and then later they'll verify, oh yes, all that did happen, and things like that. Did you ever get a verification on them standing outside, and did you see the clothing they were wearing and able to describe that to them?
No, I never asked them that. But they've read my story, and I can't imagine they wouldn't have mentioned that. But I'm going to ask my husband tonight. Because it would have been around a lamppost. It was definitely a lamppost with a light at the top, and it was raining, and they were standing, the three of them together in the rain. And I knew that they were sad because I had died. So I'll ask him that. That's crazy, but all these years and as many times as I've told the story, that he doesn't know. I don't know. He's never said anything. I don't know. But no, other than that, I was not able to see anything like that.
Because I know, like, that's one of the evidences that I always find compelling is the ability to see things going on in different locations and then have
Right.
it verified to be true. Because that proves to me, well, this isn't just some hallucination. This is
Right.
an actual spiritual event that occurred,
Right.
and they're able to describe things that couldn't describe in the natural.
Right. Yeah. A friend of mine, Kimberly Clark Sharp, she was a nurse and she had a near-death experience, and she saw a shoe out on a ledge in the hospital room. And when she came to, she could describe exactly where it was. And yeah, so I've read and seen things like that. So, but not myself. I didn't have anything that I could prove that was, because I didn't actually, that was the only thing that I saw. And that was just leaving them, knowing that they would be okay. Because that would be one concern I certainly would have, would be to leave my sons and my husband. And I would worry if they'd be okay. And I think God just showed me that they were okay, that they'd be fine. And then I was able to move on. So yeah, that would have been something that held me back, because even when I got to the point after I knew God existed and was going towards heaven, had I had the opportunity to turn back, I would not have. I wanted to go to heaven. The draw was so strong in me that I would have left my husband and my sons to go there. And I can't explain that, but it was just beyond anything imaginable. So I believe probably that was just letting me know they were fine, they would be okay. And yeah.
Well, like, as you've studied the Bible over the past decades, have you seen kind of like parallels between the near-death experience and what you experience and what you see in Scripture?
Yes, Apostle Paul went through a near-death experience when he was on the road to Emmaus, and he got knocked off his horse and had the vision of heaven. And so that was to me, when I read that, I went, oh, here it is. So I've read lots of things in the Bible that coincide with my story and with what I do. And so, yes, I have been. I feel strongly and feel very, very comfortable that everything that I have done and am doing aligns with the Word of God and with God, or I wouldn't be doing it.
You think you had your experience so that God could basically let you know, hey, I'm here and I'm real. You can have hope.
Well, definitely, because I did not believe in God. I mean, I was so angry and just, like I say, if God existed, I hated him. I didn't want any part of it. I just, because that's how people would try to comfort me when Mark died, and I became so angry with people that would say that to me, and the bitterness inside of me was just overwhelming, destroying me, and just eating me apart. And so I did need that. I don't know what could have ever brought me back other than God.
So it might have actually taken a near-death experience to wake you up to the reality of God.
Probably, but I never would have gone to this extent in my life either. I would not have chosen to be an evangelist. I would have chosen to be someone that would spend my entire life trying to reach out to people, trying to, I doubt that I ever would have done that, let alone have the relationship that I have right now. I'm a sinner saved by grace, and I'm very grateful, very grateful.
Mm-hmm. So you basically do ministry work now, and you feel called as an evangelist.
Yes, I do.
What is the work that you do specifically?
Well, I speak. I speak for Stonecroft Ministries to women lunches. I taught a Bible study for 12 years. Any chance I get, I spoke at a church here just recently, and so I do a lot of speaking, mostly to women's groups. And anytime I get the opportunity, I've done many podcasts like this, which are a beautiful way to get the word out. And I wrote my book. I do a lot of promotion with my book because I believe there's a lot of truths in it that can help people. And so any opportunity that comes up, I'm ready and willing to accept.
So your book is called "It's Safe to Die."
Is it safe to
Are you
die?
trying to tell? Is it safe to die? Is the
Uh,
answer basically yes then, or?
well, for I would hope for most people, but it depends. It just depends. I don't think it was safe for me to die when I did, and thankfully God reached out to me, and thankfully He did. I just hope it's that way for everybody, but I don't know. I wouldn't take that chance. That's why I say, is it safe to die? And at the end of the book, I tell them why it is indeed safe to die if, so, uh, yeah,
Is it you basically tell people to turn to God, turn to Christ?
I do. I do. I think that there's a thing that happens to us even now I think anybody that you talk to, and I'm sure you talk to a lot of people that have given their lives over to Christ, can tell you there was a dramatic change in them. And one testimony after another. And mine is one of many, but that's when you can say it's safe to die, when you know that. And like I said, I'm a sinner, and we all are, and saved by the grace of God. But
Mm-hmm.
he won't force himself on us. It's something that we have to seek after. And I don't want to preach because I could go into a lot of reasons why and all that, but that's for you to find out yourselves.
And your book is available on Amazon.
Yeah,
Is
it
it
is.
available in other locations as well?
Mostly on Amazon and through me. And if anybody has questions, I hope that they have the opportunity to email me. I'm always available. My email is in the book, and they just have to Google "Is it safe to die?" and get my email and ask me any questions they want. I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody. So
So how can people reach out to you, and do you have materials online that they can look at as well?
I just have my book and me, and so if people have questions and all, I mean, usually on the podcast comments or will come in. I don't know if that's true on yours or not, and I usually read those and answer them if they have questions. If not, just my email is THEKAT. So it's the cat 137. That's the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost at AOL.com. So just email me with your questions.
Mm-hmm. Is there like one final message you'd like to leave with the audience?
No, but if I could have a minute to pray with everybody, would that be okay with you?
Oh yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, that's what I'm going to do then. Lord, we just come before you today. We just ask God that you be the shield over us, Lord. That there are people out there that are wondering, that don't have a clue as to what their future holds, and they're fearful and they're hurting and they have questions. So God, I would just ask that through your Holy Spirit that you touch their hearts, Lord, that you make their pathway just straight and narrow, so they know which way to go. Put people in their lives, Lord, that would help them to find the truth. We ask this, Lord, that you would just cover us with your grace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So thank you for this opportunity, and I hope that all goes well.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
I spent several years of my life stressed, anxious, and depressed. I needed to find something that would make my life work. For me, that was meditation. With meditation, I found the peace of mind that I was looking for. I found the happiness, and I found a way to improve every area of my life, my emotional life, my spiritual life, my relationships. I was able to discover things about myself. I can give you the tools to meditate. I will walk you through the process and hold your hand. Whether you're a beginner to meditation who's never meditated, or whether you're someone who's tried meditation and it just never seemed to work, we can make it work. Meditation is something that everyone can do, and I can show you how. Check out my course on meditation.